The first light of dawn spread across Jonah Hale's ranch, painting the frost in pale gold. He walked slowly across the fields, the chill in the air biting at his cheeks, but he hardly noticed. His attention was fixed on the small bundle cradled in his arms. Inside, a weary mother huddled with her child, both shivering beneath tattered blankets. He had found them the previous evening at the edge of his land, hiding among skeletal branches and frost-kissed grass. Hunger and cold had etched their faces, but Jonah had acted without hesitation. He had offered them food, warmth, and a safe space for the night. Marin, the mother, had remained quiet, her child clinging to her chest. Jonah remembered the fear in their eyes as he approached, the instinctive way they had shrunk back from human contact. It was easy to look away, to turn back to the life of the ranch, but something deep inside urged him forward. One act of care, small as it seemed, could tip the balance between despair and hope. That night, he fed them hot stew from the cabin, offered blankets, and let the crackling fire chase the shadows from their faces. Silence had fallen over the room, broken only by the gentle breathing of mother and child. By morning, the light revealed the frost-laden world outside. Jonah stepped onto the porch, his boots crunching against frozen earth, and saw movement across the river. Figures approached, mounted on horses, their silhouettes sharp against the rising sun. His pulse quickened. The tribe he had heard rumors about, an isolated group who lived quietly along the riverbanks, was here. They were wary of outsiders, protective of their lands and traditions. Jonah's small act of kindness had been noticed, and now these riders had come. Marin instinctively stepped behind Jonah, holding her child closer. The riders did not slow as they approached, but one figure, a woman adorned with leather and beads, dismounted and walked toward him. Her presence was commanding yet calm, a balance of authority and watchfulness. She studied Jonah, then Marin and the child, and finally spoke. "You fed them," she said, directing her gaze at Marin. "Because of that, you chose care when the world might have looked away." Jonah felt relief wash over him, but also a deep awareness of the fragile balance in which he now stood. The tribe had come, not for conflict, but to witness his action. They were guardians of the river, of the land itself, and their approval carried weight beyond words. Jonah extended his hand slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement, and Marin's fingers brushed his arm in silent gratitude. A young rider, perhaps 16, approached cautiously, holding a small pouch. He extended it toward Jonah without a word. Inside were provisions, dried meat, fresh water, and bundles of herbs. Simple, yet essential for survival. The gesture carried the message clearly. Trust and kindness had been noted, and support would be offered in return. Jonah accepted the pouch, nodding, understanding the unspoken bond forming between himself and these people who had lived by the river for generations. The lead woman signaled her riders to form a protective circle around the cabin. Horses moved into position with precision, creating a perimeter that promised safety without threat. Jonah looked at Marin, who began to relax, her child nestled against her shoulder. He whispered, "You're safe now. For the moment, that's all that matters." And for the first time, he allowed himself to feel the warmth of human connection, of shared purpose. The sun climbed higher, dispersing the mist from the fields. Jonah knew the world outside his ranch would remain as harsh as ever, but for now, there was an unspoken alliance, a promise of protection. One small act of care had reached far beyond his expectations, bridging worlds that rarely intersected. Feeding a stranger had shifted the course of the morning, and with it, a new sense of hope took root. The river, winding through the valley like a silver thread, seemed to hum with approval as the tribe settled around the ranch. Jonah observed them closely, noting their careful movements, the subtle signals exchanged between riders, and the way they adjusted their horses to guard the perimeter. There was a rhythm to their presence, a silent coordination that spoke of years spent watching, protecting, and surviving together. Marin stirred, her child blinking sleepily in the early sunlight. Jonah offered her a seat on the porch and poured fresh water into a tin cup. She accepted, her hands trembling slightly as she drank. The simple act of nourishment brought a glimmer of life back into her eyes. Jonah understood that the tribe's arrival had strengthened that spark, confirming what he had already felt. They were not alone, and they were no longer vulnerable. The woman who led the tribe stepped closer, studying Jonah with careful eyes. She nodded once, a quiet acknowledgement that she had seen his intentions, and then gestured toward the land. Jonah realized she was assessing not only him but the ranch itself, the fences, the fields, the riverbank. Her gaze lingered on the horizon, where distant ridges met the sky. There was a challenge in that look, a question without words. Who would protect this land if danger approached? Jonah did not have to wait long to find out. A group of riders appeared over the crest of the distant hill, their approach steady but unthreatening. Jonah recognized them as neighbors, ranchers who often competed for water rights and grazing ground. He felt a flicker of tension, but the tribe remained poised, silent guardians ready to intervene if necessary. Jonah had learned long ago that strength could be quiet, and today, the silent vigilance of the tribe spoke louder than any gun or shout. Marin looked at Jonah, her eyes wide with uncertainty. He smiled gently and whispered, "They're not here to harm us. They're here because they know the river and the land have been respected." Her body relaxed slightly, though the tension of fear lingered in her posture. Jonah felt the truth of his words. The realization that simple acts of care, feeding, sheltering, protecting, could ripple outward and shape the world in unexpected ways. The young rider from earlier approached again, bringing another small bundle. Inside were blankets, more dried food, and tools for warmth. Jonah accepted them, sensing the deep message behind the gifts. This was a pledge of support, a demonstration that the tribe's loyalty had been earned. He looked at the lead woman and offered a nod, silently acknowledging their shared understanding. Hours passed, and the morning gave way to midday. The tribe remained, patrolling the perimeter, speaking in quiet tones among themselves, sharing observations and maintaining vigilance. Jonah worked alongside them, repairing fences, tending the fields, and ensuring that Marin and her child were comfortable. Each small task carried with it a sense of unity, a bond forming between rancher, tribe, and the people he had chosen to help. By afternoon, the distant hills began to shift in color as clouds gathered. Jonah sensed change in the air, an approaching storm that could challenge even the best prepared ranch. He glanced toward the horizon and noticed that the tribe had positioned themselves strategically, their horses grazing calmly but ready to respond. Jonah realized that their pledge was not just words, it was action, discipline, and presence, a living shield around his homestead. Marin watched in awe as Jonah coordinated efforts with the tribe. The child laughed softly for the first time, the sound carrying across the fields, breaking the tension that had gripped the morning. Jonah felt a deep sense of fulfillment. In a world that often rewarded self-interest and caution, he had acted from compassion. And in return, a community of guardians had aligned themselves with him, transforming vulnerability into strength. As the storm clouds thickened, Jonah felt a quiet confidence. The tribe's presence had changed the dynamics of his land. No longer isolated, no longer defenseless, he understood that the simple act of feeding and sheltering a mother and child had sparked a chain of events far greater than he could have imagined. Night fell like a velvet curtain, cloaking the ranch in shadows and the soft glow of fires. Jonah stood by the cabin, watching the tribe move silently among the stables, checking horses, patrolling fences, and keeping vigil. The mother and child rested safely inside, the warmth of blankets and the crackle of fire offering reassurance. Jonah felt a calm he had not known in years, a rare peace born of shared purpose and trust. From the ridge, he saw shapes moving, figures observing, testing, ensuring that the ranch was secure. Jonah's heart raced briefly, but the tribe's vigilance never faltered. Each motion was precise, each glance calculated, yet there was no aggression in their actions. He realized that they were not only defending the land, but reinforcing a principle he had long believed in. Care and loyalty forged strength stronger than fear. Marin approached the porch, her child asleep in her arms. "They've stayed with us all day," she murmured, awe in her voice. Jonah nodded, understanding her wonder. The tribe's commitment was not temporary, nor was it casual. It was a demonstration of their values: protection, respect, and honor. In helping them, he had gained allies who valued life and loyalty above all. The first hints of dawn appeared once more, painting the sky in soft amber and rose. Jonah looked out across the fields and saw 20 horses approaching from the ridge. The tribe had returned, bearing gifts of trust, a tangible promise of protection. Each horse was strong, well cared for, a symbol of their dedication to safeguarding both the ranch and its people. Jonah's chest tightened with gratitude and humility. The lead woman approached him, dismounted, and placed a hand on his shoulder. No words were needed. The horses, the vigilance, and the presence of her tribe conveyed everything. Jonah understood the bond that had been formed, not through contracts or agreements, but through acts of compassion, courage, and trust. By feeding a mother and offering safety, he had created a connection that could not be broken. The morning light spread fully over the ranch, illuminating a land now filled with movement, care, and promise. Jonah felt the weight of solitude lift, replaced by a network of loyalty and protection he had never known. He knew challenges would come, but he also knew that the bond forged here was enduring, a living testament to the power of kindness and the strength of human. The tribe moved as one, guiding the horses into the stables, inspecting the fences again, and ensuring that every corner of the property was secure. Their discipline was precise, yet their respect for Jonah and Maren was evident in every gesture. They spoke softly among themselves, exchanging words that Jonah could not understand, but their intent was clear. The ranch was now under their watchful eyes, and no harm would reach it as long as they remained. Maren stepped closer, her child still nestled against her chest. "I've never seen people act with such honor," she whispered. Jonah smiled, feeling a sense of pride and relief. "Sometimes," he said gently, "the world shows its strength through kindness, not violence. Today, we witnessed that in full." The child yawned, eyes heavy with sleep, and Jonah realized that the first night of rest they had experienced in months had finally arrived. As the sun climbed higher, the air was filled with the soft sound of hooves and distant river water. Jonah walked among the horses, running his hand along their strong backs, feeling the connection not only between man and beast, but between humans and the world they shared. The tribe observed quietly, offering nods of approval when he handled the animals with care. This morning had brought more than safety, it had brought understanding, trust, and a profound sense of community that transcended boundaries. By midday, the ranch had transformed. The fields seemed brighter, the air fuller, and even the fences seemed sturdier. Jonah watched as the tribe prepared to depart, their tasks complete, leaving behind not just horses, but a promise of protection that would endure beyond their immediate presence. The lead woman approached once more, her gaze steady and firm. She gestured toward the ranch, then at Jonah and Maren, and finally at the horizon. No words were necessary, her expression said it all. The ranch was safe, and the bond formed today was lasting. Jonah turned to Maren, seeing hope and relief etched into her features. "They'll be back if we ever need them," he said softly. She nodded, smiling faintly, a tear glinting on her cheek. "We owe them everything," she whispered. Jonah shook his head gently. "No," he said, "we didn't owe them. They came because of what we did, the care we showed. That's what mattered. That's what created this." As the last riders faded into the distance, Jonah looked over the ranch, feeling the warmth of morning and the quiet strength of the tribe's pledge. The land, once solitary and vulnerable, now thrummed with life, vigilance, and an unspoken promise of protection. He understood that the simplest acts of humanity, a meal, a blanket, a moment of compassion, had the power to ripple outward and transform entire lives. The river shimmered under the sun, the horses nickered softly in the stables, and the wind carried the promise of continued safety across the fields. Jonah knew that life would continue to challenge him, but he also knew that trust, kindness, and courage had created an unbreakable shield. In one morning, through one choice, the world had shifted, and a connection had formed that would endure beyond this day, beyond this season, and perhaps even beyond their lifetimes. And with that knowledge, Jonah Hale felt a quiet peace settle over the ranch, knowing that his simple act of feeding a mother had grown into a bond stronger than any fence, more enduring than any storm, and more valuable than any possession he had ever held. If this story inspired you, remember, every act of kindness matters. Stand up for what is right, help where you can, and trust that your actions can ripple into something far greater than yourself. Share this story. Let it remind others of the power of compassion, and be part of a world where courage and generosity always have their place.